Today's interview is with artist David Day, who is not just a talented Magic the Gathering artist, but he's also the youngest of the talent family that includes Gene and David Day. And he's also a very patient man, as we had some issues with a lightning storm that cut us off and issues with Zoom where the interview was nearly lost to digital purgatory. But we snatched it from the clutches of technical difficulties. And speaking of technical difficulties, why is it so hot in here?
Maybe it's a hot flash.
I know what you're getting at, and I am insulted.
It was a joke.
I am only 5,000 years old. I think it's a little early for menopause.
What?
If you paid attention in science class, you would know what I'm talking about. But I don't have time to teach you that. We have to get to the interview. So, without further interruptions, I give you David Day.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
No problem. Great. Nice to meet you.
Awesome. We made it through. The last one we tried, it did not work out so well. There was a freezing on both ends.
Yeah.
So you come from, a family of artists.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like. Your older brother, your oldest brother, Gene, was very influential in the comics art. So what was it like growing up with somebody like that? And how did it affect you as an artist?
Well, Gene was not like an older brother in most families. There is like 2 or 3 years apart. Well, Gene was not. Gene was born 15 years ahead of me. So I was the baby of the family. And back when Gene was born in 1950, you had big families and they're over a long period of time. Well, Gene's the oldest and I'm the youngest. And so I didn't have 2 parents. I had 3 parents. I had mom, dad, and Gene.
Right.
And he got into deciding that he wanted to be an artist later in life. So I was a little bit more, I could see what was going on. Like he dropped out of high school, didn't really know what he was going to be a rock star, he is and stuff. It was the 60s. It was 1967, 68. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And he was engaged and that didn't happen. They didn't marry her. So he decided to go to college and he went and took an art course up in Toronto at Sheraton. And I was 6 then. 5 or 6 around that time period. And it was a 3-year course. He was living with a guy called Richard DeWolf. And they both grew up in a one-room school, or going to a one-room school together. And
Whoa.
So they're best friends because they both drew. We grew up in the country. So just off the St. Lawrence River in Ontario.
In a one-room school?
One-room school. Yeah, one-room school with an outhouse and everything. It was 1950s, the 50s it was. It was the 50s. That's the way it was. But it was a one-room school. They loved to draw. But he knew what he always wanted to do. He didn't want to. Gene was into everything. Gene was into music. He was into writing. He was all over the place. And so Richard went right to college, and he learned his stuff. Well, Gene realized that he was learning more at night watching Richard work as a commercial artist in Toronto than he did at the actual school. Because the school was just like you drew a tea kettle for a month. The first week you penciled it. The next week you inked it. The third week you did a watercolor. The fourth week you did an oil or acrylic painting of the same tea kettle. And he was realizing he was learning more at night he was with Richard. So he dropped it after a year. Came home, started his career, building it up. But Gene was a workaholic. Every day he would do a pencil. He would do a science fiction illustration, a horror illustration, and a fantasy illustration. And he would send it off by mail to different publishing companies. These were all fanzines back in the 70s. The stuff that Gene Simmons from Kiss had on one of the episodes. They're all like almost done by photocopy and stapling them together, these fanzines. And that's where all the writers that were big in the 70s and a lot of the comic artists came from. Like Buckler came from there. Joe R. Lansdale came from these fanzines and stuff and all this stuff. And he started doing that, sending them out every day and most of them were getting returned at first. And then he got more and more accepted. Then he branched off, started doing comic books and went from there. And I'm leaning over his shoulder and I started drawing one day, but I was tracing over top of another piece of paper and he grabbed it, ripped it all up, threw it in the garbage. Said, "That's not how you do it." And he showed me how to draw. So
wow.
If you want to draw, this is how you draw. And being that, Danny, my other brother, Danny, who works for DC Comics and Marvel Comics as well, another one along the way. He is a brother in the middle. He's 9 years older than me, 6 years younger than Gene. And so when Gene was 20, Danny learned from him, and he was at his level of 20 when he went to school when he was like 13. I learned from the both of them, and I was like 10, and I could draw like they could at 20.
Wow.
You learn from the other
So
one because you learn all the mistakes.
Right, and you really benefit off of the like that you can't really that stuff seems like it would be hard to teach, the work ethic and also the reality of being an artist and working like that the way your brother did.
That's what you learn from more than anything else. Gene taught, and so he taught Dave Sim too, the great Dave Sim, who did Cerebus, a black and white legend, self-publishing legend. 30 issues he put, or 300 issues he produced of Cerebus. Was the work ethic. If you want to succeed in anything in life, you got to put the work into it.
And you definitely have that element to you as well. I mean, like just looking at the sheer amount of sketch cards that you do, it boggles the mind. How many do you think that you've done? Like if you had to guess.
Oh, I don't know. I've been doing them since 2001. My first one was back then was you did the same card. They paid you $3, and then you did the same card like 500 times. It was the same drawing it was, and that's what you would do. And then along the way, the fans, and some of the new guys coming in were doing more and more and putting more into it, and it just grew to where it was, and I grew along with it. If you want to wanted to climb out and just not be one of the local guys, and nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to get, climb up it. That's what I want to do.
And when you started doing that, was that before you had stepped into like the fantasy realm and sort of working on Dungeons and Dragons? And
no, my fantasy days go back. I started back in 84, 85, working for Chaosium, doing a book. I did the illustrations and the cover to a book called Demon Magic for Chaosium, a Stormbringer, one of the Stormbringer campaigns. And then I did through the 80s, I was working for them, West End Games, doing covers for those guys, and a few other companies now escape me. And then, that's what the Villains and Vigilantes was the name of the company. They did some bunch of stuff, and I did some covers for them and illustrations for them. A lot of the bottom tier companies, at the time. And then I climbed up, and I was doing comic books at the same time, and I climbed up, and I got my first module, I think was in 90 or 91 for Dungeons and Dragons. I did the black and white sport. I think it was called Beacon's Thief or Secrets of the Spider Hunt might have been the first one too. I don't know.
Do you prefer, or if you are to pick one that you prefer doing more, do you prefer doing black and white, or do you prefer the ability to do color? Is there because it seems like there's a distinct sort of way to do them that and with inking being in your background too, I'd imagine there's some differentiation.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, it's with him, I learned the most was work ethic, and that's what Dave Sim learned too from Cerebus Comics. Was David's come down with a stack of artwork about 2 inches tall over a 3 or 4 month period, and Gene would show him a stack that was about 20 inches tall that he's done over the same amount of time. And it's just the work ethic to it. Now I've never had Gene's work ethic. He worked 16 hours a day, slept 4 hours, got up and worked 16 hours again, which of course I think in a way kind of contribute to him passing away so young.
Yeah, he died very young. It was
31.
Yeah. I mean that's a baby basically.
Yeah, but in those 10 years that he worked, and those 5 years for Marvel, he did 4 books a month when he was 18 for Marvel. And Marvel at that time was only producing 16 regular titles a month. Gene was working on 4 of them.
I saw that he finally got a special credit in one of the films. I'm going to mispronounce it because it's one of the I think it's Chinese or Asian sounding title. What is it called again?
Shang-Chi, Master Kung Fu.
So that must have been nice to see that because
the whole family just lost their mind when they seen that stuff. But but there was a thing when Marvel was trying to change back in the late 70s and early 80s. They're trying to say that comics are not just for kids anymore. And their number one title was Master of Kung Fu. And the number two title that they were showing everybody that's not just for kids was Moon Knight. And now that's big on Disney too. But those were the big adult comics back then.
It's like now it seems like comics are almost like exclusively not made for children anymore.
Well, that's one of the problems though with comics, and now like last year I think it was $400 billion was made, or something ridiculous like that was made in on comic books, and DC and Marvel are like down on the list like around 47. It's stuff like Captain Underpants are like number one, or number two, sort of thing. It's the kids, and I think they need to go back, because when I was a kid, I got into comics from reading Archies and stuff. Then I also read Sugar and Spice, for I think DC Comics used to produce Sugar and Spice. Then in the 80s, Marvel had the whole Star line of Elf and and they had Elf, and they had I think they had I think it was Sugar, not Sugar and Spice. They had the Strawberry Shortcake.
Oh, Strawberry Shortcake.
And they had the Ewok comics and other things they had. They had a line that was designed for kids that got them into the business, that got them into reading comics.
Yeah, because it's like I remembered even reading when I was when I was 12, there was a Married with Children comics. I don't know who made it.
Yeah, that was Now did that. Yeah, I love the book. And well, he went on. The artist from it went on to do work for Mad Magazine. He's what took over Mort Drucker's job for Mad Magazine.
He was
Tom
good.
Richmond, I think his name was.
And they were bizarre too. Like I remember, like I think Peggy got to she got a sort of an ex, like she got sort of possessed by something. It was kind of strange.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I digress. So what brought you to the point where you got involved with your work with Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, I got into comics being an assistant, working with Danny on his first issue of Swamp Thing and Batman, and assisting him. But I always got into artwork. And I'm going to say this: the first time I went to a convention, it freaked the hell out of me. It did, going to a comic book convention.
Why is that?
To me, because there were like these people that came up that were like, I seen artwork as being on the cover of an album cover on the side of a van. It was like what the guys from Dazed and Confused, represented. You know what I mean? It was that to me. Artwork was Boris Vallejo, Frank Frazetta, machoism. The gorgeous, woman on the arm of a big hero man. And that's what and I seen that, and that's what I liked about it. And I liked growing up, I was into Greek mythology and all that sort of stuff. And I like comics. Don't get me wrong. I started reading the Cracked Cracked magazine, Mad magazine, got into the horror stuff at Creepy and Eerie, and I like my superhero period, and I love my war comics and my horror comics and all that sort of stuff. I love monster movies and stuff. But that's what I wanted to achieve with my artwork. So I wanted to be on the side of a band or on an album cover.
So you were intimidated because you felt like that your style of artwork was not on the same level as a Boris Vallejo?
No, what it was I felt it was not on the same level as the cool kids. Okay. In my mind. And my brother Danny sat me down, and because I came back to the motel room afterwards at my first Comic Con, thinking, well, I don't even know if I really want to do this for a living, because it's not, what I thought would be the audience that I want to sell to. And he said, they're passionate people. They're just into what they're into, and the same way that you were nerdy 10 years ago on the Batman and Adam West TV show, that's what they are now. So imagine you being a 10-year-old boy, and that's the way they are at their heart, at their age. It might have been 17, it might have been 77. And that's when I realized they had a child at heart inside them.
Yeah, we're basically all nerds, whether you want, any way you cut it.
Any way you want to cut it. And I remember Gene saying to me when I used to look at his stuff, well, what do you think of this, the page and stuff? Yeah, looks cool. when I was 13, 14. Yeah, looks cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just you don't want to, really give your emotion out. You don't want to.
Yeah, sort of like that male posturing that was sort of like, I mean,
Yeah.
it was back in the day, you had to back that a certain way, it was like,
Yeah, this is in 1980, 81, but late 70s, 81. And so I got into, well, I always wanted to paint. And I was actually supposed to take over because Gene was colorblind. We had to
really?
write on, yeah, we had to write on the browns. We had to write on a piece of tape, brown and green. We had to write what the colors were. He couldn't, he couldn't tell by the tubes on them and stuff.
Wow.
So we would mark them off for him. And so I was going to take over being his colorist. And he actually wanted me to take over the coloring master of Kung Fu because Jim Shooter's fiance was coloring it. And she was doing bizarre things like making the sky purple and the water pink and doing weird things with the coloring. That was just, even to this day, if you go back and look at those books, they're bizarre.
And that's something that when you do that, it does. I mean, I'd imagine there's some sort of like there's some sort of parameters that they give you where they're like, don't go, or is it just sort of like you see it as they come?
She got the job because Shooter was policing Gene because he thought that he could make Gene a better artist by controlling his layouts. Jim Shooter did, and that was what made Gene the artist that he was, and that's why he only worked on the book 2 years as a penciler and left that kind of impression in the world because of what his special talent was a layout. But Shooter only seen comics as being, a certain thing. He didn't see it as being a real art medium at the time.
And
he see it strictly for short story.
Yeah, it's very ahead of his time. Then it sounds like if he was able to see that was eventually that became what is known now, I think, as common knowledge. Like people respect it as.
And if you go back and you look at Gene stuff, I mean, at the time period, I mean, his stuff back in 79 and 80 holds up today, 40 years later, and not just holds up, but exceeds today and stuff on it because he was that kind of what they used to say about him was he was an artist. He was what other artists looked up to because he came from like liking Barry Windsor Smith and liking Bernie Wrightson. Wally Wood was a big influence on him. Will Eisner was a big influence on Gene. And Steranko was a big influence on Gene. So, and
it's clear that he was a huge influence on you. I mean, like it's again. My heart goes out to you it's such a, it's tragic when somebody dies that young. It was a heart attack, correct?
Yeah. It's coronary heart attack. It was, but it's a family history though. A bunch of my cousins and aunt and uncles have all passed away from that. So I get checked on it. My other brother, Danny, gets checked on it constantly, but Dan worked with him closer than I did because he was closer to the same age as Gene. So he worked with him right along with him the whole way.
And so like the I guess going to the events or going to the conventions, is that what sort of drug you into the Dungeons and Dragons world?
No, I always wanted to paint, and what happened was the Chaosium got a hold. Gene was supposed to do an RPG cover, and they got a hold of they called the house, and we answered the phone. We were starting up, Danny was working on his own thing for DC, and they called us and they asked for some samples, and we sent it down there, and that's when I got the contract to do Demon Magic, and I was like 19 years old. Wow. And I was doing some covers for the Gene Day Black Zeppelin, and so I had some samples up. Now I wasn't strong enough as a penciler, I didn't feel. So Danny penciled the first couple of covers. I did a couple of the ones for black covers on Black Zeppelin. I penciled those ones and painted them. But for the RPG, the first couple of RPGs, Danny penciled them, and then I painted them.
So there's inking, and then there's penciling. And so do they sound just like what they are? Or because what's the difference then? What is the difference between inking and painting then?
Well, penciling is just you have a pencil and you do the rough. And it can be, I've seen very loose pencils. Like I've seen John Byrne and George Perez, even though he passed away, he was a great artist. And I've inked some of his when I was studying as a kid. Gene would give me some of his photocopies of George Perez and Byrne, and I would practice on them. And some of them are pretty suggestive. They were, and some of them are very, very tight. Some panels are, you could just, the ink itself. And some of it you have to pick what is important and what's not important on it. And then with painting, it's a little harder it was to paint Danny, because Danny penciled like a comic book artist. So he didn't see shades. Painters see shades.
Mhm.
They see the different tones. They see total. Comic books see black and white. It's in feathers in cross hatching is what gives you shape and roundness. So it was a little hard sometimes to paint Danny, and that's why I eventually had to go on my own and to get to where I am now as an artist. I had to get on my own on it, but for that I was taking his pencils that were like comic booky and turning them into the fantasy stuff.
When did you start doing these sketch cards? Because it's a huge. The amount of sketch cards you do is astonishing. Do you remember?
That would be the first set was Battlestar Galactica. First set we did, and back then you got paid $3 a sketch, and you mass produced the same drawing over and over again. Like the same drawing you do like 100 times, and they're happy to have that. And then along the way, new guys were getting into the business and adding more and more and more, and all of a sudden it became on its own. But then the value of the cards became astonishing. They tripled from being worth like $65 on eBay to being like $1,000 on eBay. And I, along the way, realized that I had to put more and more time into it if I wanted to go on and be with the top-notch guys. I was only doing the very first, what was asked of me, and then eventually I started to put more in than what I was getting paid, because I make it on the other end of the artist proofs.
Did you ever have one sketch card that you did that you were like, it was painful that you had to sort of let it go, you wanted to?
None of that is that way to me. My first wife and my second fiance, they have pieces of artwork that they love. And to me, no, because it's always the next one to me is going to be the one I'm going to be happy with. So as an artist, it's just you sell it and you move on and you go on to it. There's never a piece. Now I do. Speaking of that, though, I do have a drawing by my brother Gene that he drew for me when I was 10 years old, and it's Robin, and I have it on my wall and had it my whole life, and I would never do anything to sell it. I have that.
Right.
So there's one piece of artwork, but it's not by me. When I was younger, though, I wanted to originally own a piece by Ken Kelly, the Hildebrands, all these guys. And then as I got older, I realized, well, yeah, I could paint my own. Yeah, but I put it on the wall and I look at it for a little while, and yeah, I'll sell it.
I thought I saw one of your Freddy Kruegers hanging on a wall, because on Facebook you had a post up of sort of thing, because you were going back to the conventions and you hadn't been in a while, and I think your fiance had it made for you, sort of a display thing, and I looked like your Freddy Krueger was on the wall. So
that was a print. That was the only original. The only original I got on the wall is a book cover I did for a young preteen fantasy story for I think it was HarperCollins publication, and that's the only one I have on the wall. I kept the one original painting, and the reason I kept it because I can't sell it. Nobody wants it because it's a preteen. It's kind of like a tweeny kind of thing, and nobody wants it. But if it was an RPG illustration, it would be gone like that. I don't charge what some of the other guys charge for the original artwork. I keep it a lot lower, but I still make money off it. But I don't ask for like $5,000-$6,000 for a painting. I sell them for $800 to $1,200. And the reason being is I don't care. I got paid for the print rights. If I get paid for the other stuff, that's just extra money for me along the way. I don't worry about that. Same as I don't do prints either, because I figure the print is the publication is the print.
Okay. Well, so then do you get the assignments, like if you're doing, say, like a Freddy Krueger, if you're doing a brand thing, is somebody doing licensing, and then you're hired as? Okay.
Yeah. So
is that way they all have like the each of the logos on the bottom and stuff like that?
Yeah. That's why, but that helps. But going back to I could do portraits really, really well. And so I've got like, whenever if you go and you follow me and Danny, our career through comics, we did some superhero stuff, but normally we worked on Sherlock Holmes, Man from Uncle, Nightmare on Elm Street, Elvira, Star Trek, Quantum Leap, all these licensing, Mr. T. We've done all these licensing comics. We always do. We basically we'd have been a great artist in the staple or in the company of Gold Key back in the day. The Gold Key used to produce nothing but these TV shows, and that's we've done a lot. We did a lot of those comics we did over time. So it was natural for us to go on, for me to go on and to do the licensing of the sketch cards for companies, because I can do portraits really, really easy.
Was there an IP that you loved the most out of all of them? Like, is there one that you just sort of can't that you hold to higher regard personally?
I would like to have kept. I like to do the monster stuff. I know it's the Lord of the Rings and the Middle Earth stuff is what makes the most money for me, but I like the monster stuff. I like the horror, the Hammer horror and the Lone Chaneys and the Boris Karloffs. I like monsters. I grew up watching monster movie matinee on TV as a kid every Saturday afternoon at 1:00 out of Syracuse, New York, and I just fell in love with that stuff, and I still do to this day. I love horror movies.
Oh, me too. I love horror. Love horror. In fact, I wanted to talk. When I was interested, you did the Wicker Man on some of the sketch cards, which I was.
Yep.
And I won't give away what it's about too much here because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But if anybody has not seen it, please see it. And it's the original one with Christopher Lee in it.
The better one, not the Nicolas Cage one. That one is a waste of time.
No,
say it. It's a waste of time.
I don't know why they did that. I just don't get it. I mean, but in any case, what was was that one just for a passion project, or was that also something that was licensed?
That was out of England. That was called Unstoppable Cards, and they produced. They had the licensing to Space 1999, which I loved it as a kid. And I'm going to get beat up for saying this, but I like Space 1999 as a kid better than Star Trek, a TV show. Oh, I watched it on Channel 11 here, which was a CBC Canadian broadcast every Saturday afternoon at like 3:00. It was on, or 4:00 it was on, and I loved Space 1999. And then I got into watching Star Trek when I got about 12 and 13. I like them more. But no, so they had those ones, and they also had the rights to the TV show Avengers, and so I got into working with them. But I started working the sketch cards for Rittenhouse, and then I went off to Topps on Star Wars. And I find now I'm working for most of the companies I work for are all Kickstart companies, and the reason I like them better is because Topps only gives you like 2 weeks to do like 50 cards. Well, you can't do fully painted cards like I do in 2 weeks and do any quality. The other companies give me like 2 months, and I can do, fully painted work. Now, Cryptozoic, speaking of that, Cryptozoic gives me the time. I worked on the DC Crisis, and I worked on the Middle Earth for them. And the first sets I did for them was the sketchographs, which is the actor. I do a portrait of the actor from the movie Middle Earth, or I do a portrait of the actor from the DC Crisis. I did 10 of the actor who played Flash and 10 of the girl who played Supergirl. And then their names are the bottom, and then they'll autograph it afterwards. And I enjoy doing those ones a lot. But they gave me the time to do fully painted.
Have you ever gotten feedback from any of the, you've done a ton of, you've done so many people. Have you ever gotten a chance to get feedback from anybody you painted?
Yeah, the Lone Chaney people said his grandson, Lone Chaney Jr.
The
so
third, maybe he's the third or second or something.
The third one. The second one is the Wolfman. The third one said, please hire me more often to do the artwork on it because they're that happy with it. They were.
Wow.
So, but that was nice. That was cool. Because again, like I said, I grew up watching. I remember watching for the first time when I was like 9 years old, watching the Wolfman versus Frankenstein, watching that movie. And that was great.
Yeah, Lon Chaney, the Lon Chaney estate approving. I mean, like Lon Chaney is basically like, I mean,
Yeah,
he's a historical figure now, and like
yeah,
not just horror, but just in general. I mean, he's
yeah,
legendary.
yeah.
It's almost hard to imagine anybody being like that today because I don't think you could. There's so much influence. It was the
No.
beginning of the films themselves. Like he was there at the forefront. So
Well, I just realized that, and it was telling people I was up at Toronto, the Comic Con, Lon Chaney Jr. is the only actor to ever portray all four of the major monsters in a movie. He played the Mummy, he played Frankenstein, he played Dracula, the son of Dracula, and he played the Wolfman.
really, I
No
didn't
other
realize he
actors
played
played
Son
all
of Dracula.
four.
Huh.
Yeah, he was in the son of Dracula. He played Dracula. Yeah,
That's well, I didn't realize that. Do you
yeah.
remember, do you know what do you think one of the best horror films that you've seen like in the past 10 years has been? It
Oh, the past. Oh, I love the remake of It. I
was
love
great.
those two. Those
It was
two
great.
were very good.
I mean, I think in
Yeah.
certain ways it surpassed. I mean, I loved the
Oh no, no, it's superior. It blew the. I like the old one before. I was a big John Boy fan from the Waltons, and I had the board game of the Waltons and played it all the time. I like that, and I still have it on DVD. But I know that the new It was like creepier
yeah.
than hell.
One of the guy, another magic artist, Vincent Prost, did the creature designs for that movie, and I interviewed him.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
very brilliant mind. Now, what led to the magic cards? I mean, what was the in for you there? It's because it was like you came in and you did your cards, and then it was like you sort of came in and you did your thing and then left. And I was curious what the story was. To
Well, it's a tragic and sad story in a way.
is it?
I was working for Magic the Gathering, working for Dungeons Dragons, doing the modules, doing the magazines. I started with that company doing the magazines, Dungeon Magazine, Dragon Magazine. I worked on probably 60 to 70 of each one of them, or maybe in total, I don't know now, a large number. Sent my samples off to Wizard of the Coast, but this is before they were bought out by Wizard of the Coast
Hasbro.
bought Dungeons Dragons, and sent it to them. Got hired. My first card was Smoldering Tar.
Mhm.
Did it. They liked it. They said I was a little too tight. Need to be a little more looser. This was on a canvas that was about I'd say 7 by 10 maybe. Nowadays people are painting a lot bigger they are, but back then it was all that around that size. Did that, then got my next assignment. I did two more cards. I did 2 cards. Then I was doing them regularly, and then this other project came up with my art director who I was working with at for Dungeons Wizards of the Coast, bought them out by now, and bought and started doing Harry Potter. And I thought, hey, Harry Potter, that's going to be big. I love doing that. I would love to work on that. So I threw I asked to do work on any Magic the Gathering to the side and said, no, I'm going to take over and I want to work on it now. So I started working on nothing but the Harry Potter. And I did like 30 cards for them.
Yeah,
and
you
then
did
after
quite a few.
2 years.
But but when you stopped doing the art though, it doesn't sound like that there was any like serious bridges burned per se.
No, there wasn't. It was just at that time I was spending all the time on them, and then I was working for White Wolf Games on Vampire: The Eternal Struggle. They were giving me more than enough work. I wasn't making like the money was like here for Wizard of the Coast, and it was here for Vampire. So you had to do more, but they were giving me like 10 cards a month. Vampire the Eternals. I did like 60, 70 cards for them over a 3 or 4 year period. So they kept me really, really busy. And I was doing other ones along the way. I was working on the Legend of the Five Rings, Warlords, and other stuff.
There was a reprint of your unset card, which was pretty crazy. I mean, like that must have been like a nice like win. So because at least you get artist proofs from those, right?
Yeah, I got the artist proofs on those. So that was nice getting that in. And like I think I did like 15 cards for on Magic, but only like 9 I think seen print. 7 or 9 scene print,
So
somewhere in that range.
you mean that you did artwork for the cards and the artwork just never made it, or
They just never made it. Just it didn't play well. I remember
Okay.
doing one for the Jackass set. I did one card that's seen print, which was Spin into Myth. I did another
Yeah.
one that was called it was this guy, and he was like speaking, and this word balloon turned into a zombie donkey and was screaming at him, and the other one, which was it was plant your own monsters and grow your own monsters, and it was like a garden, and it had like, you know, you see peas and carrots on the stick with the package, but it had like a cyclops and a unicorn and plant your own monsters and mythological creatures.
But so is that different than like back, I guess I take it they had assignments and then they scrapped the cards entirely?
They just didn't play well. When they did they get it up, and like I remember getting pre stuff for some of the cards. I got pre like, this is kind of what we want, kind of a rough layout.
Yeah,
but
they
feel
give
free
you
to
the
change
briefs.
it. Yeah, and I remember saying to some of them, like, they're just going, "Why do you want, like, this is beautiful. What do you want from me? This is good already. Print this." No. We want you to do your thing on it. This is just, you know, the guys we got here in our studio to do, you know, for the play test, to try it out and to give you a rough layout for it. And I'm thinking, well, these things are gorgeous. You know, why bother hiring me? I'd just print from this. But, you know.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that kind of like psychology, that sort of thinking, do you think that helps or hurts you as an artist? I mean, because
I don't mind. The more information the more information is, the better. You got to remember, a lot of freelance artists are like 2,000, 3,000 miles away from the art director. Communication can sometimes get so mumbo jumbled across you know, the phone or whatever, that they don't get what they want, what they're talking about. I remember one time an art director sent me the script, and he wrote, "This guy walks into a bank and has a canoe on his head." And I'm like,
what?
A canoe on his head. And I'm like, a canoe? Are you
Like a boat?
A canoe? A canoe, like a boat.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, no, not like a canoe. I mean, the canoe, like you go up a paddle with a canoe." And he goes, No. I mean, you're the thing that the guy from the Monkeys wears. I mean, a balaclava." But he had no clue what a balaclava was. He thought it was called when it was a Canadian name, he thought it was a canoe.
Balaclava, like in the band The Monkeys?
Yeah, but, you know, like a toque that goes over the head, a balaclava.
Oh, I didn't know that had a name. I would have assumed for a second. I was thinking of, there's a picture that you see like a monkey with the dunce cap, and I was like,
no.
that, like,
Balaclava is the toque put over your head that only has the eyes and the mouth hole. That's a balaclava. In Canada, we used to wear it all the time when it was really cold, and like 50 years ago when I was a kid, we wore balaclava all the time. But this is a guy in California who was writing a story. So when the criminal goes into a bank to rob it, yeah, that made sense. He's wearing a balaclava. So the communication, it's you know, people don't know certain things.
Yeah, because then you turn in something and he's got a canoe
on his head.
On his head.
There is a comic book character in Canada called Captain Canoe, and he walks around with a canoe on his head, and he has holes cut in the side, and you could see his eyeballs through it and stuff.
That can't be good for your back.
Yeah. Oh, it's an old Canadian cartoon from the 60s or 70s.
Well, I mean, we have, like, in America, we had Captain Planet, which was like,
yeah,
awkward, stuff.
There's
What
some
were
bad stuff.
What were the circumstances for you working with Walter Koenig?
It was Malibu Comics. We were doing some stuff for them, and at the time we were working for Marvel, and I knew the guys at Malibu quite well through just talking to them, and they were fans of Jeans and fans of Danny and stuff. And we were like, whenever they needed something quick, we would do like a cover for them for a graphic novel or whatever, and they would pay us what they could afford. And they couldn't afford a lot. So when they got the giant carrot, as I call it, when Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee went over there to do Image, and they were the publishers of Image for the first year, they started to invest that money into their own company. So one of the first projects they had was Raver, and we got the job of working on Raver with Walter, and I was very happy to do it. But more than me happier was my mother, who was a big Star Trek fan. She just went through her whole. I talked to Walter Koenig today. Told all of her friends who didn't know who Walter Koenig was, and she would say, Chekhov from Star Trek.
Right.
And I would, so that made her day. It did on talking to him, but he was great to work with though. It was a great book. Sold really, really, really well. The project did. It was fun to do. People didn't. I think they didn't market it correctly. They tried selling it as a superhero book, but in reality, it was a science fiction book.
Yeah.
It should have been, sold, done more that way. But oh well.
That's amazing that somebody would mix up like Star Trek for superhero.
Well, that's again. It's like I said to them afterwards. We're doing Valiant covers here and stuff like that. We've got an actor already, and basically the character is kind of, a man is kind of what it is. Why don't we put a costume on Walter and shoot him with some lights and make him? Well, we don't want to do that, they said, because that's kind of what William Shatner's doing over on what was that called, Star Tech or what, Tech World or whatever it was called. His book that he was doing was basically the hero was William Shatner. So that's what happened there. But anyways, I'm just the artist. I'm just the penciler. We're the penciler, inker, and colorist.
That kind of sucks because it's like there probably have been very many instances where you're like, why are you doing it that way? It's
there's a lot of times like that. I remember working for the big boom in the 80s. There was Air Cell Comics, which was they started doing the samurai comics with Barry Blair, and there was a huge boom in the black and whites around 85. Turtles came out, and boom, the whole thing wasn't cool anymore doing a color book. It was cooler doing a black and white. Of course, a lot more money to be made doing black and white because it's cheaper to produce it. Yeah. And I remember talking to the company. I said, well, you have a good product. You guys are doing a good book, but you might want to think about getting a better letterer because it's hard to read the books. And that's kind of important in a comic book, is be able to read it.
That's pretty.
And that was just like over their head. No, we don't care. I'm not going to listen. Blah blah blah. And it's like, well, yeah, you might want to, get a better letterer for it. And that was all I said to him.
Wow.
And they lasted like another year and a half after, they had a big boom. They came out, and then they went kind of nowhere after that.
That is something else, right? Just like you'd think that. I mean, the people get so self-righteous, right, about things that they're involved in that they can't be objective. And it's like, if somebody's telling you this, it's not because they're trying to insult you.
No,
because
that's the number one thing that I try to be as an artist and as a human being. Is I try to grow. I take everything that's around me constantly, the good and the bad and the ugly, and I try to get better. And I try to apply that to, like, if you go back and see my sketches that I did 10 years ago to the sketches I do now, it's completely different. You think that's a different man. It's a different human being altogether.
Yeah.
And it's just because I'm trying to grow and become better all the time on it, which was the one thing I learned from Gene. And I knew that years ago. It didn't matter if the job paid $1 or if it paid $1,000. You do your best at all times.
And what do you think the reason was? Like, you were off the convention scene for a long time, and then you came back on. But what was the reason that you stayed off of it? Was it connected to your sort of being nervous about it in the beginning, or why did you stay away for so long?
It was just, it's changed. When I started going into doing conventions, they used to pay for your way up, your rooms, your food, and a table, and now you have to pay for your way there and your rooms, your table. The only thing they give you is a table now. So you really have to make a lot more money at the con. I don't do sketches. So I don't like to do sketches at a convention because it's not my best work. I'd sort of do something in the house and bring it in. I've seen Mike Kaluta and I've seen other guys, famous guys who are great artists, do these crappy sketches, and that's no problem. that's good for them. I don't like doing that anymore. I refuse to do that anymore. But I've seen guys pay for it and walk away happy. Me, I'm not happy doing it. So I could make more money just sitting at home and selling my stuff over the internet nowadays. But what you do lose out on, though, is you lose out on, when I started going back into it, what sells, what doesn't sell, what people like, what people don't like. That's kind of what you do miss by not going to a con. You get feedback on the internet now. You get, people leaving little blurbs. That looks good. That looks here. But you can't really tell, because I did a bunch of sketches and I thought, well, I'll try this thing and I'll try that. Monochromatic colors here and there on some stuff. And I couldn't sell those ones, but the ones that were more realistic, those ones are all gone. Okay, well, I realized, doing an Andy Warhol kind of a, thing, I can't get rid of that. But realistic, I can.
What would be an example then of like something that was big, say 10 years ago, that is like today would not be like something that would sell well? Are there trends that you've noticed?
Yeah, over the time, anything that looks realistic always is a better seller for me, at least with my style. It's always been the one that sells the most. There was some times where, anything at one time, if you did with aliens on it, you could get money for. And I can't sell anything with like an alien on it now because it's not as big as it once was, the alien, from the movie Alien stuff, where I can't. Or I could do it on anything, a little drawing of it, and it'd be gone. But if I do a realistic photographic of anything, then I could have a better chance of selling it. But that's helps with my style though too. And now it's I can't believe how well the altars are a big business.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know about this a year and a half ago. I didn't know
Really?
what altars were. Didn't know. When a guy out of New York called me up, says, "Can you do an altar?" And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Well, here's a sample." Sent me some samples off. I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." And so I did it on it stuff. He was like, "Wow, you put a lot more work in it than the average bear." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't mind, sure." And then I've gotten better because you're painting on top of the printed card.
Yeah.
So you're painting basically on top. It feels like you're painting on glass. So you draw it, and then you have to prime it all white, the area, and then you paint on top of it. So it's kind of like the paint smears all around on you. So it takes some getting used to, but that's a big thing now, these altars. Well, I can't believe, and I've done a couple hundred, at least 300 of them, and I got orders for another 200 more.
Some of them that I've seen of yours are like where you do like sort of you do remix of classic paintings.
Yeah.
Really, really good. I mean, they look like the authentic thing, and then when you think about the reality that it's like on that small of a space, it's like the 10 Commandments on the head of a pin kind of thing.
Well, there's a thing that I've suffered and lost over the time. My eyesight is not what it once was. I work now without my glasses. I have glasses, I have contacts, and I have working glasses. And I work with, when I do the cards, I have nothing. I just use my regular normal eyes, which only see good about 5 inches in front of me.
Why would you do that? That seems like that would be really dangerous. Like that would.
No, I asked my eye doctor, and he says, no, it does not hurt the eyes.
It doesn't.
It does not hurt. Nope, does not hurt the eyes to use them. No, to use them that close on it and stuff. It's just if I was to look away for a while to go back to it, I'll get that little bit of a little bit lightheadedness from it. So when I work, I just stay at the board until it's done. But no, it doesn't hurt it at all. And but doing those recreations of those masterpieces and stuff, I find them incredibly easy. I don't know why. It's just like falling off a log. Simple. Really? I do them faster than I do, say, doing a Star Wars spaceship, because the Star Wars spaceships are so
ornate.
Exact. They have to be like the TIE fighters are, those ships are like, you have to be right on with the angles or else they look stupid.
What is the favorite altered commission that you've gotten?
Oh, that would be the 3-piece elf land, Rivendell it's called. Yeah. The 3-piece I did for Truman.
I think that you posted that on Facebook, right?
Yeah, yeah. I post everything on Facebook. That's why, in a way, I stopped going to cons for it, because of the computer. I mean, you don't need to anymore. You used to go there to a con, you would meet publishers from companies. They don't even send people anymore to the cons to meet anybody. I mean, in a way, it's you meet them over the, I
Yeah.
remember used to needing tear sheets to send off for samples or photocopies. Now it's just beep, 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 and you send these
Yeah.
off and it's free.
Yeah,
So
ArtStation is big too. I've talked to a lot of artists who have been discovered via ArtStation, which is pretty cool. I
Yeah.
mean, just
Yeah.
to that they sort of stock them, and then that's it must have been really wonderful when you were included in, because I mean I read a very substantial interview with you in a book that was about sketch cards that you were.
Yeah.
Now.
Ingrid's.
And
yeah, Ingrid's one. That was cool.
Well, I mean, like, was that something that felt vindicating? I mean, because you pushed so much work into it, and it feels like that was sort of like that was the place to be, as far as.
Yeah, it was nice to be. It's always nice to get to be appreciated for the work that you do. I don't care if you're a dishwasher or a stonemason. Somebody come up and say, "Job well done." It's always nice, whatever you do. And so, kind of to me, it felt like a job well done to be inside of there. That's what's nice, to be inside that. I mean, there's artwork is such a thing where you can't really say you're the top or you've achieved what you want to achieve or whatever. Because I know people that don't like photographic, they like anime, and they like, they have their likes, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's taste. That's what art's all about. It moves you in a different certain way on it. What I love is not what somebody else is going to love. I loved working on the Elvira comic when me and Danny worked on it. Yet my brother Danny hated working on the Elvira comic.
Why is that?
He never liked reading Mad or Cracked, and I always liked those kind of books. And I even liked I used to go and I bought like the Welcome Back Kotter comic from when Marvel had it, and I bought the Kiss comic when Marvel did the Kiss magazine. I bought those. Gene and Danny never would have bought those ones. Gene bought the Beatle one for George Perez because he was working with George Perez on the Thing 2-in-1, so he knew George, and Gene was a big Beatle fan, so he bought it. But no, they wouldn't buy those kind of books. They wouldn't. I bought them. I like those kind of ones, but they didn't like it. Danny was a big Shadow, Swamp Thing, Tarzan kind of guy. He was a big DC guy. He loved Commandy. Danny was. He was big into Commandy. Where Gene liked, everything. He liked, didn't matter what it was. He was a Marvel guy, number one, but he liked Gold Key. He liked classic illustrateds. He liked all those ones.
And then I read that you have one other brother, right? That's named Joey, right?
Yeah, Joseph.
He was the one that was just not into art.
Well,
right?
But I got like this. Gene was producing fanzines back in the 60s, and he was writing his own stories and illustrating.
Really?
And
wow.
Joseph, yeah, I got like stacks and stacks of them. And him and his friend Richard DeWolf were writing them and illustrating them and stuff. And then there's pictures of them inside there, but Danny would do, and Danny was like 10, and Joseph was like 7 or 8 drawn. Joseph could draw. It's just he didn't like to be at the art table. He wanted to be outside, running around, getting fresh air and that kind of thing. Joseph was, but Joseph could draw too.
What did he end up going into professionally?
He worked for a hydro company.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, I was like, because I read that and I was like, oh, that must have been rough. But now I found out he can draw. I'm like, well, then that's not so rough because.
Well, no, but he did get some flack. People, oh, you're the non-artist one and stuff. And you just go, well, no, honest.
Right. But, yeah. And in every other family, being the artist is sort of the black sheep.
He kind of was the black sheep. Yeah.
That's funny.
From it.
What are you working on now that you are able to talk about?
Well, I can talk about anything. Right now, I just finished up a double drive-in theater 9-card puzzle that fits into the 9-card sleeves for Richard Falks on the Horror Express and the Satanic Rite of Dracula. I'm working on Nosferatu. Is that the old horror, the German one?
Yeah, Nosferatu. Yeah.
Working on 20 cards for Richard Parks. Cryptozoic wants me to do another set Highlander for him, but I don't want to work on Highlander. And That's just
There's
not
going
my
to be a
cup of
set
tea.
about Nosferatu, you say?
Yeah, that one I'm working on. That one sounds cool.
That will be cool. Wow,
Yeah.
that will be really cool.
Yeah.
No, so that's, I mean, is that going to be a game or is that, what is that?
No, that's just going to be a card set. It's just going to be a Kickstart card set, and I'm thinking about doing my own. I am this fall producing
really?
my own set. Yeah, on it there. But mine, I'm going to be. I want to be do what Gene would bring into it, which is I want to bring in like a story, and you turn it over the back and you read it. You know, there's a story in the card, not just be a shot from a movie or something like that. I want it to be a sequential kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, because with Nosferatu, it's a famous enough story that you don't really.
Yeah, you can't tell it. You can't tell it. Everybody knows it already. But with mine, I want to.
And is this a story that you wrote yourself, or is this one
in
that
my mind? Yeah, it's all in my mind already. So I just have to get right now. Just finishing up contracts, and then I'll be going to spend some time on it over the summer.
And what genre is it going to be?
Oh, it's going to be a horror. It's going to be a horror one. It's an old slasher kind of grotesque monster kind of horror one. That's what I like.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds right at my alley.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you know more about it when I get some stuff finally penciled down, rough down. It's done in my mind. It's already done already. But on there. And Ultraman. I'm working on Ultraman too. Ultraman Series 2. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ultraman Series 2.
Yeah.
If people want to touch. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I did like 80 cards for the last set. I did a 45 card puzzle and I did like 50 cards for Richard on it afterwards on top of that.
Have you ever played your own puzzles? Like, is that, I mean, that seems like it would be fun to do.
Yeah. I've done that. Yeah.
And it's like, I'd imagine you'd get really pissed when they're difficult and you're like, I painted this thing. I should be able to do this much quicker.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice thing about it though.
Yeah. So, well, with that, I think that is all the questions I had for you. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And again, it's sorry about the mix up.
Oh, no problem.
The lightning. It's
God's God be whatever.
I think that isn't that's a famous saying, right? God be whatever.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so you got behind you got my mountains, my Goblin Mountains.
I got your mountains. I love it. It's like it's one of the like cooler mountains. It's just
people have told me do you want to know a secret about those two paintings?
Yeah, sure.
I was just going from doing Harry Potter to work in, and then these two came in the middle of it. The job did, and I finished up 10 Harry Potter paintings, and did it in 30 days. Went up, watched a hockey game up in Ottawa with my brother-in-law. Come back, we had a few beers, had a good time. Got back, got a phone call as soon as I got back. I hadn't slept at all the night before. Got back, we need those two paintings now. We need them now. Well, why? The deadline now. So I did those two paintings, the plains and the mountains. I did both of them in about 48 hours.
What? Oh wow, jeez, yeah. Crow. That's
so I just went back to my basics and treated them not like a fantasy painting, but like a landscape, classic landscape, which is what I took, the approach I took to them, which was, study of watching Frank McCarthy, looking at all his paintings over the time. And then the other classic, landscape artists, the older guys who worked in the business 100 years ago, looking at their stuff. And that's what I approached it. So everybody likes it because I did that kind of stuff to it. I did, realistic, kind of painting, something that could hang, look like it could hang in a gallery almost. Those two pieces. That's how much fantasy is that.
Definitely could. I that's the exact reason why I love them too, because they're
that's what everybody likes them for. But yeah.
But what's neat though is the way, I guess, with the coloring, that it's sort of like, that gives it the fantastic element, but it also it still feels like it is fantasy looking, but it's very real at the same time. So yeah, that's
yeah. So it was a cross between the deadline. Yeah, I couldn't play around with it and overthink it and doing that. But they've been they're my two most popular. I mean, they've been reprinted numerous times.
Yeah.
I mean, at least 3 or 4 times each one of them has been.
I mean, I can tell you this much: like, if I could get, if I don't play red often, but if I could, I would love to get in like an entire one of mountains, just like of a commander set of just your mountains, because I like things that like I like them to be sort of synchronistic.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not one of those people that can have like 18 different like land types because it's chaos.
Well, my first drawing for the Goblin Mountains actually had goblins in the painting on it, and then they told me to get rid of the any kind of a thing. Same as my first stocking stones, not stocking stones, steel wall painting had the original drawing, pencil drawing. Actually had little figures on the ground, like kind of like just join it because the ground was rumbling because the wall was coming up. I actually put figures on them, and then was told by the company, "No, get rid of the people. The people are playing it are the ones going to feel the effect of it. That's what we want." Okay, no problem. So,
do you still have those sketches somewhere?
They're long time ago.
Well,
everything's sold of mine. I told you, I only have one painting on the wall. And,
yeah. I just was wondering. I thought maybe hopefully you had like maybe like a picture of it or something because like that kind of stuff I love to see. But yeah, if it's gone, it's gone. Although bummer.
It's gone. Sorry about that.
Sorry. You should have thought about me before you sold it.
I should have.
I mean, we've only met recently, but you should have thought.
I should have.
But thank you so much again. It's been fun.
Thank you for having me on your show.
You have a good night.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Hold on. Don't start recording. You mean to tell me that there's no such thing as a man period?
Correct.
Well, then why is it whenever I get cravings for chocolate, they're immediately followed by bloating and cramps?
Sounds like lactose intolerance.
I tolerate lactose. I'm tolerant of all the guilds. Lactose, Mardu, Celesbian, and Dothraki. I mean, I even speak Dominarian. So you don't even know what you're talking about, okay? I'm only 5,000 years old. It's like wisdom teeth. It's just something that doesn't even happen to everybody. I don't know any men who it's happened to, and it could only, I can't be the only one, can I? I can't be. But I have hot flashes, and that's science. And you can't argue with science. I'm going through menopause, and it can't be anything else.
I am sorry.
You're not the one who caused the hot flashes.
I just realized I didn't turn the air conditioning on.
I may be a vampire, but you're a monster. Bye-bye.